additions or amendments to the agenda?
So,
Amy?
Amy, do you have anything to add? I make a motion to accept the agenda as written.
Sure, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And just so everybody understands, the 10 the Driftway, if anybody's here for that, that's gonna be continued. And Lewis at 119 Man Hill, that's gonna be continued. So if anybody's here for either one of those, they'll be continued. So, do we want to start with RDA?
Sure.
O'Connell, 1 Dickens Row, request for determination of applicability. Anybody here for that?
No, actually, they were scheduled to be out of town on business. I thought it was pretty straightforward that you guys could just take a look at it on your own.
Well, let me just open that one and then.
Do we have copies up there, or should I give you
I
some copies?
don't have.
No,
I
because
don't
I
know.
didn't get, that's the only one I didn't get. Not yet, that's all right.
On August 20th, 2018, during the 6:15 meeting at the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of David. Can you say that? What's the last name?
Ski.
Or is there C?
And Leslie O'Connell for determination of applicability to Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands bylaws to replace lost concrete along foundation on ocean side of home on property located at 1 Dickens Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. So,
Was this from this winter storm, Amy?
Yes.
this thing was pretty well washed out.
Yeah, they got a lot of damage. Foundation, I guess.
Part of the insurance claim, I think, for repetitive loss. Fixed it a lot.
They just want to fix, they're not going to add anything.
Correct.
Penny?
No, I don't have, those are the only questions. Winter, the storm, they just want to shore it up before the next one.
Richard?
Good.
Paul?
Looks good.
Lisa?
All set.
Jen?
All set.
You want to add anything to this one?
No, it appears consistent with the -2.
You know, when you
Okay.
go down the road and you take a right on Dickens, it's there.
Take a
One
motion.
right there in the corner, there's
I
a-
make a motion for
Right
a
there, good
negative
stuff.
2
I think so.
on
He's like,
1 Dickens.
1 Dickens Road.
and it
Second.
just been
All in
fixed.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So Scanzillo,
Yeah, sure.
10 the Driftway, the requested a continuation.
Did he say how long, Amy?
He has it
Oh.
on his notice.
What date should I go to, Frank?
They asked for October 1st.
Okay. I make a motion that we continue 10 New Driftway to October 1st at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Hey, we got like 2 minutes before 6:20.
Oh.
So, anything you want to add to?
Sure, so, as you know, we've had some action with some of our enforcement sites.
Mhm.
We have seen some progress with Mr. Kamen at Candlewood. As you know, a couple weeks ago, he submitted the restoration plan for the rock area, which looked good. I've been in communication with Jerry and with his wetland scientist from South River Environmental, and they are in the process of putting together the notice of intent. We received a number of complaints from abutters about work hours and other disturbances possibly in that buffer area. So we went ahead and reissued we're just reviving the enforcement order, which is one of the things that is in your to be file to go out to Jerry, just clearly defining what we're expecting of him in a timeline for the notice of intent. And we also have Another case was a dune case, which I think that most of you are familiar with down in Hummerock. So this was an unfortunate incident where neighbor altered a coastal dune for a private property owner, and I think he was unaware that it was not his property or something. I'm not sure exactly what the story was, but basically they want to try to work it out, and not so sure that's going in the right direction. We've got the party that did the altering is ready to restore and has a, planting plan with the sand and the vegetation, but now the owner is not necessarily wanting to give access without a formalized enforcement order. So, I don't know, I have an enforcement order ready to go for that, so that just in case either or party starts to dig their feet in, we've got something to make this happen. It's a pretty substantial dune, so.
Is the property split there, Amy? Or I mean, can the person that wants to do that, is there a portion of it that they can replant?
Well, it's tough to tell from the tax maps, you know what I mean? There's a paper street, so that one property is directly on the ocean, and then there's a paper street, and then the other property is a longer parcel.
But yeah, he could plant the paper street without going on.
But I'm not sure the paper street should be planted, but
Was it?
What paper street is it?
It
What
was.
It was.
it's.
It was disturbed,
Hummerock
so-
Beach.
letter? Rock Beach Road?
Okay, just give me 1 second, sir.
Right, so that's the gist of that one. So we've got the EO ready to go. And, I mean, if the owner of the property doesn't want the other person doing the work on their property without an access agreement, I mean, that's more of a legal thing. All we really have control of is restoration of the altered resource area.
Would an enforcement order give them more permission to do that work? I mean, is it really necessary? I'm not sure.
No, I mean, and we were trying to keep this informal when all parties were working together towards the same goal. But now it sensing that that's falling apart a little bit, so.
Yes, sir. You want to state your name and address?
My name is Gene Hunt. I'm 28 Harvard Street, the property in question. I'm the homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
The street in question is Berry Avenue, which has not been opened. We have a case where I did try to work with Mr. Lavoy, who's will be the defendant here. He elected to, without permission of myself or the other adjacent homeowner or other abutter. Coincidentally, the Conservation Commission also owns a lot nearby. He elected to, he's a real estate lawyer also, he elected to remove 6 to 8 trucks loads of sand on the sand dune barrier beach without permission from anybody around. He has no ownership at all. It's across the street from his property. He has no ownership to it at all. He, in conversation with myself and with Amy, indicated that he would put in a plan for this meeting. He said he would do that on August 6th. On August 3rd, he elected to come back and fill in sand in the area and indicate that he had a planting plan. He did no dig safe in an area where there are major gas lines. He did not submit a plan by August 6th. He indicated to Amy and I on August 7th that he would submit a plan by August 9th, which he did, but in complete violation of the requirements of being on the agenda. My and the other abutters' concern is, although trying to work with him, he elects to go his own way. I think the only way that we're going to have any control of the situation is an official enforcement order. Amy has explained the terms of that to me. I'm prepared to have it on my title. I don't think we will have any control over him more than the board will with an official enforcement order. I and the other abutter will not give him access to do any additional work until such time as we have an official enforcement order that he has signed.
All right, I don't think we have to, there's nothing that we have to vote on
No.
for that, so I think we'll take that up internally. I appreciate your input. I'd like to see it get taken care of. I mean, does anybody else has got any?
Gotta be resolved.
I mean, I've been over there, I spoke to him, he's very anxious to fix this. I sent him, after we spoke, an email because he said, they said it's getting pretty late to plant the Rosa rugosa. And I
Right.
said, without going on his property, on the paper street, to go ahead and plant that as soon as he can. He's restored the grade and he's ready to plant. Waiting, and I think missing the window doesn't achieve anything.
Okay. Yes, sir.
The, absent permission of the abutters, he doesn't have permission to do that. The abutters own into the road. The road was, any permission to do anything to the road needs to come from the abutters. He had no permission to do it. He indicated that he had a plan. He elected not to submit it. So we have someone who, in fact, on his own, without any permission from anyone, elected to remove all the sand he did. He indicated he would have a plan, and he did not. 4 days before that, he elected to put the sand back in. I have no confidence that he can be believed because all of his actions have indicated otherwise.
Well, I've been over there, he contacted me,
Yep.
I've seen it, I've seen the plan, and he is very anxious to
I'm
plant.
sure he is.
Yes,
I'm sure he is.
and,
I'm more concerned with that he be held legally accountable with an official enforcement order than I am with speed.
Well, we can hold him legally accountable, but you cannot insist on enforcement orders. We determine who is going to get an enforcement order, and it generally is against people who don't cooperate and don't make an effort to restore the area. What we have is a person who's very anxious to restore it and plant right now, and he's not the problem holding it up.
I'm happy to accept being the problem. I'm fully, as long as we all acknowledge that we have someone who, without any permission from his land, elected to take 6 to 8 truckloads of sand out, elected to put 2 back, on land he has absolutely no legal responsibility for.
So, just, I get both sides of this, and it seems like we're getting close to getting it fixed. Do you see an issue with issuing an enforcement order on this? I mean, essentially, it's going to be onto these folks' property. To
Well-
issue the enforcement order, does it really,
Well, I mean, if we have 2 willing parties, then there's less of a need for the enforcement order, but if you don't have cooperating parties, then I think there is a need.
right?
And that way you're holding the party who did the actual altering and then the landowner, they're both actually responsible for restoration.
Right.
Ultimately, I mean, property owner is ultimately responsible, but since we know who did it, you know what I mean, it's kind of a legal
Sure.
thing.
Well, I mean, if it's, personally, I don't, if that's what's needed to move this to the next step, I'd issue the thing. Just as a formality or whatever, if it works, as long as it's not creating any issue for the town. I mean, personally, I don't wanna see the town get embroiled in some issues between neighbors, and we always seem to have this issue over some of these paper streets and whatnot at Humrock, and again, we're not the person to decide about
Right.
ownership or property lines or anything like that. We just want the piece restored. So if the enforcement goes to both parties, it's going to the person that did the violation as well as the homeowner who seems ready to take it on. So I don't see the peril in just issuing the enforcement.
Well, that would be the way I would recommend handling it, just to have it, you know,
Okay,
solid. You have got the enforcement orders in case they dig their heels and they don't want to do anything.
sure,
Then we've got something to fall back on.
okay.
But, you know, of course, we could move something forward without the formalized paperwork, which is what we attempted to do in the beginning.
Yep.
Then that would be great, but it doesn't look like it's working out, so,
Okay.
unfortunately.
All right, well, okay. We got to 6:20 plus. So, thank you. Thanks, Amy. Grassy.
Gracie.
Gracie, I'm sorry. 180 Central Ave. Replacement. Anybody here for that?
Right, and Chairman, I'm at 178, and we would like to present these cases together. They're abutting properties, and it's basically the same plan, so
Sure.
I think we could save you some time by presenting them together.
I don't have a problem with that.
Great.
So just give us your names and addresses for the, yeah, make another chair there. Thanks.
All right, he's got one.
I
Thank you. Can share with Paul.
So my name is Tom Charbonneau. I'm at 178 Central in Hummerock. I have with me Mr. Gracie is at 180 Central. Also with us is Stan Humphreys, a coastal geologist that we've retained in order to help us understand the project, as well as Bob Crawford, who has done the civil surveying of the project. I have a couple of remarks, and I think Mr. Gracie wants to add something, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Humphreys to explain his analysis, if that's okay. So we've been working on this for quite some time, and apologize for the number of continuances that we've had, but it seems to be an area where there is not really a lot of agreement on what is allowable and what isn't allowable in Hummerock. So we originally, it was our understanding that if prior to the Wetlands Protection Act, we had a structure of some sort of barrier structure in place to protect the property, that it could be replaced. So Mr. Gracie and I provided evidence that we provided in a letter, I think in early July, to the commission. It should be in the file, that shows documentary evidence that there was a structure in place going back to the 40s on these properties. It's long since gone. It's been disrupted by many storms, but we have evidence that it was in place well into the 60s anyway. However, again, since there's sort of a lack of agreement as to whether we'd be able to replace that structure, having evidence that it had been there, we've engaged Mr. Humphreys to really help us understand both the legal and the practical aspects of it. Bottom line, I'll get to just from my standpoint. We're not trying to armor the beach. We're really only trying to enhance what is already there, some existing protection in the form of boulders. Our intent is to add protection so that we can protect against the high impact waves that come over in severe storms. They are damaging to our septic systems. Obviously, they fill our driveways, they fill the roadways. And we invest money every year in rebuilding the cobbled dune that stays in place for about one storm. So we're looking for something that's a more practical solution that can withstand, the season's worth of storms. We're proposing what we call a boulder dune, similar to what had been in place from the documentary evidence, and that will allow some sediment and water flow, but it's not intended to be a structure that is going to withstand a 100-year storm. We understand that. So we think that these are reasonable measures that are consistent with other things that have been done on the beach in Hummerock, and we ask for your consideration. Bob?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you, Mamie, for the opportunity to make our presentation to you tonight. I had sent 7 folders, one for each member, with pictures. I don't know if you still have it, but
I think we do, yeah.
you do. Okay, that's good, because it gave the pictures from 1940, the wall in 1960. I've got one in 1970. Sometimes it went right across Seaview Avenue. It was 200 feet long. So there was a significant wall, and some of it became stone later because some of the wall went. But our real problem is this, that at least 1/4 of a mile to the north of us is all armored in some fashion. When it comes to us and Seaview Avenue, there's nothing. We're like a funnel, and we take the the size of the beach, or the quantity of the size of the beach, hasn't changed over the long term, but the storms have become more recent, and also more intense. And so, again, with the septic systems, we're concerned. And then when these waves hit the rocks, they don't just go up and down, they go sideways. We're catching that side flow, and we're getting the business end of these waves in addition to what's coming off the ocean. And anything that we do is not going to impact somebody else, because Seaview Avenue is sitting beyond Mr. Charbonneau. So we would like Mr. Humphreys, and would be happy to make a presentation to you, and also Mr. Crawford.
Good evening. Stan Humphreys, postal geologist with LEC Environmental. The commission has a letter from LEC dated 13th of August. And I just would like to just emphasize a few points and then be available for questions. You know, Hummerock, as we all know, is very heavily developed. And Bob referred to the quarter-mile north, which is a section that the town's been looking at to propose some upgrades to the road, elevating the road, putting in a cobble berm. But out of those 26 properties, maybe 4 or 5 don't have boulders in front of their properties. The overwash still occurs, and that's plagued the town for closing off Central Avenue, and plagued the owners as well with removal and disposal issues, where to put it, material, where can't we put the material. So suffice it to say, it's not a natural undeveloped barrier beach. The other fact that comes into play, I think, heavily is that since the late 1800s, the coastal zone management shoreline change data shows that this area is very stable. It's not migrating landward as a lot of natural barrier beaches are. The overwash coming into the marsh is obvious evidence of the barrier widening, but it's essentially flattening out. Typically, barrier beaches will migrate landward and upward over time and retain their form and volume, but for whatever reason, Hummerock doesn't seem to be doing that. The plan revision that I think you all have has an overlay of the cobble berm that the town is proposing. And I just wanted to point out that this proposed additional boulders is below that elevation and much narrower in its width, essentially forming more or less a core to what may come down the road with the cobble berm. It's 2 feet lower, as you can see. And looking at the natural circumstances, the coastal processes, the stability of Hummerock overall, as I said, overwash is still able to occur. I go through in the letter the performance standards under the local bylaw and the state regs, and I believe that in large part what they're proposing to do is consistent with the regulations, that there's compliance here. Arguably there's a change in grain size, but I think without going into too much detail, there's a dominance of boulders, a strip of boulders, and like Bob said, goes for about 1/4 of a mile. So with that, I don't know if Bob wants to add anything about the specific additional material. And I know the commission's been interested in size of stone, weight. I don't know why, but weight. And he's gone through some calculations to that extent.
Well, I think we've got the gist of what you want to do here. Maybe we typically would just work through the members. You know, Amy's had some conversation with CZM. I don't know if it's better to get some of that up front for the I don't know if you've discussed this with other.
Well, sure, I mean, just starting with DEP comments on this project, their note is that the project doesn't meet the performance standards for coastal dune or barrier beach. Further conversations with CZM and from DEP's own coastal guidance document, what they're looking for, it's a tough situation, we understand that, to look to the north and see what's going on to the north, but for structures after 78, no engineered structures, which stacked boulders would be considered an engineered structure, you know, the alternative is to add volume, and the volume would be clean, mixed, compatible material, consistent with what's on the beach now, so that would not be boulders. So, it just that the boulders would interfere with the dune function is what CZM's bottom line, so.
Can I ask a question for clarification?
Sure.
You said that DEP had commented that it doesn't meet performance standards. Was that the first submission, or was that the most recent submissions? Because I understand they had that comment from the first submission. I don't know if they've given us comment on anything subsequent.
They have not given new comments on the second submission, but it's the same thing, more or less. I mean,
Well, we had proposed a engineered revetment with, you know, subsurface material and, you know, cobbles on that, and, you know, how you would build a revetment that was, you know, meant to, you know, withstand, you know, 100-year storms. So we backed away from that, and I don't know that they'd have the same comment. Perhaps they would.
yeah, for DEP, they would not give us new comments. However, CZM did see the new plan and the LEC report, and those were their comments. Was that what I already just said?
Thanks.
Penny?
Oh, here we go. As the saying goes, we're all caught between a rock and a hard place. You know, I sympathize. I understand you want to protect your home, but I also feel as though we're charged with following with DEP and CCM what the regs are. So I just put more cobble, do some plantings. It's a tough one. Richard?
Mr. Ch-
I think what typically we would do is go through
Okay.
the members. We'll get to that. We'll have some discussion for sure. Let's go through this part and then out to the audience.
This is one of those cases where, just from living in the area and seeing what happens every year, CZM and DEP may be right 98% of the time, but this is one of those cases where I think they're not, and there ought to be some way to work around this. The cobble that is on Mr. Humphrey's house is incredibly high every year, and it keeps coming back, and if we add more cobble, there's going to be more cobble in his yard, and you know, Benny's right, we have to obey the rules, but there's got to be some way. I think this is not a normal situation. Everything north of them has boulders, and obviously does leave them exposed because, as he said, the water does come down and then it floods out Seaview Avenue, which of course is now under 2 or 3 feet of packed beach sand from last winter. So it's a very difficult situation, but I can understand their quandary. I really can, and I don't know how we can approve it, but there's got to be some way we can figure out something. That would be my sense of this, that could help them.
Paul?
Same thing Richard and Penny said, you know, it's I understand the rules, but it's kind of one size fits all, so the beach can migrate. This beach, we're not allowing it to migrate.
It doesn't.
And, right, and there's houses there, you can't allow it to migrate. But, you know, I had mentioned in the last meeting, the state has told us several times, and I don't know from an engineering standpoint how it would work, but they have said build dunes, and at the core of the dunes, put the gabions full of stone. I don't know if that's a solution, but,
Did we allow that, so- I don't mean to cut off Sir Jen yet, but I'm sure you weren't involved, Amy, but that was a solution. Stan, I don't know if you were involved in that one or not, but at somewhere along here,
yeah.
someone did use gabions, so you wind up with, it's kind of silly in a way, you wind up with material that's the same size, but they're all bound together.
It's cobble. Technically, it's cobble.
But they're bound together by
Yeah.
this mesh, and then they were buried in a dune.
Is that what we did at Atlantic Ave?
Well, we did it down farther.
Yeah, in
They-
Atlantic
they
Ave,
did it
at the
down
other
farther,
end,
yeah.
the other
Yeah.
end of Atlantic Ave
Yeah.
from where you are. And actually, I was just by there and I noticed growing quite a bit of beach grass in it now after
Yeah.
2.5 or 3 years.
It was way
So it's
down the
interesting
end.
that that's still there. And at that time, it was an experiment that was not fully approved, except by us.
Yeah.
Well, no, but they were encouraging it, because they said it's a dune.
Well, we
You
brought
know,
them
and
out
put
there,
those in-
actually.
Put the cobble inside, it's still a dune by their definition.
Yeah.
The other place.
Do you know where I mean?
Yeah, I think I do.
Dr.
On
Chinetta's.
Barrett's, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
The other place that it was done more recently was at the toe of Man Hill Beach where Surfside Road ends.
Yeah.
And there was a repair made to fortify that end as it comes off the seawall from the surf side. It winds up ripping into that section of Man Hill Beach and deteriorating that. So as a way to slow that down, they did a bunch of gabion baskets. I think that was a town project to hold that, and it carries out for a ways, so. Paul had mentioned that earlier. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer, but
Yeah.
Yeah. Lisa? Sounds pretty profound.
I'm trying to formulate my words. I find it very difficult to, knowing the conditions of what these houses go through, the intensity. There is a 12-foot mound on Seaview adjacent to Mr. Charbonneau's property that is going to cause rebound effect on him. And that was the washover material that was trucked down from the northern part of Hummerock, where the road built up. Even when that road is in its normal level state, what these properties go through, cobble and sand isn't going to last. And the Dr. Tonetto's pilot program that we did in, I believe, 2015, last winter, was torn apart 3 times. And that's where PA Landers was hired, and they went up and down Central Ave, taking material and rebuilding it back 3 times last winter. They just don't have the ability to be able to withstand the intensity of these storms, and thus make people's cesspools and septics vulnerable. And my concern is, there's nothing worse than raw sewage going into the land, and if we're gonna permit something that isn't gonna last, I just feel like we're responsible for the outcome of the raw sewage.
Because you feel that septic systems will just get deteriorated after that.
They'll get destroyed because the material without the riprap to break some of the intensity, it just goes after. I've seen several neighbors that until they put additional riprap up, that was the only thing that protected their septics, because the dunes just don't last. You know, putting grass and planting grass every year, year after year, it just doesn't last.
Jen?
Richard pretty much covered it, so I won't repeat it, but I echo his sentiments.
And Frank, just real quickly, the state's rebuttal on some of your comments are that these aren't supposed to be permanent solutions. So at this point, I mean, they're holding out for the cobble berm, the engineered berm structure that they're designing to go down the entire stretch Hummerock Beach will be the ultimate solution to help these properties out. But until then, these are temporary nourishment solutions, and this is what is approvable. This is the permittable solution in accordance with the regs. So, and according to them, the boulders, they're not gonna cut the wave action.
Okay.
So, it seems counterintuitive in a lot of ways, but they're the scientists.
Sure. Anybody in the audience, or anybody can?
Mr. Chairman, have several points I want to make. As far as gabions are concerned, I was down to Plymouth, and I saw what they look like. And after they've been through a few storms, they become twisted wire and rock, and it's something no one wants to look at or have in their yard. Not with the kind of tides and waves that we get at Hummerock. It may be good in Virginia, may be good in New Jersey, but not here. The other thing is, talking about the cobble dune, I just want to say something that Mr. Humphreys mentioned it. What we're proposing is 2.5 feet lower than the cobble dune. So obviously, there'll be more overwash going over that than the cobble dune. Secondly, the density of the cobble dune is a gigantic. It must be 1,500 yards in front of each of our houses. That's what it would take to build that cobble dune. So it's just, we'd be more performance sensitive with what we have than that is. I'm not saying I'm opposed to the dune, I'm just making comparisons where someone says the cobble dune is okay, well then what we've got is better. The other thing is, I think I would expect CCM to say what they said, okay? But with the state, it seems to me you're not a rubber stamp board, and you have a right to make a decision based on what you hear from us. And then if they don't like it, then the state always has the option to override it. Simple as that. So I just think that the board should work autonomously. The last thing is, and I won't go into the place, but along Hummerock Beach, there was a huge boulder dam, boulder wall that's been put up in the last 2 years, bigger than what we want, and it was approved. So I don't think we have to, or the board needs to worry about setting precedent here, because we had walls before. And it seems to me, if you had walls, you could replace them. They're doing it all over Scituate. They're raising the walls 2 and 3 feet. They're fixing the walls. Well, we had walls too, and we've got pictures, and we can show you the walls across the street where they are. I mean, we're not making this up. So we should be able to do what everybody else in Scituate can do, and that is rebuild on our walls.
This is the property he's talking about that we were involved in.
Was there an actual seawall that was conditioned, or was it a rebuild of one?
It was a riprap wall,
What's the address?
214.
And there was a hearing and it was permitted?
Pat went there. And it had to be realigned, but it was allowed to stay.
Yeah, but it was an existing wall.
No.
No.
All right, so I guess that's something we need to
You
look at.
remember that, don't you, Penny?
I don't know, I mean, I'm gonna look at that project
I'm not sure. it was-
and see whether or not, how that was permitted. I mean, if we can be within the same guidelines of that, we'll take a look at it. Anybody else?
A couple things. Have you ever?
Yeah, we know that.
Oh, no, I'm
No,
just
your
curious.
name?
Oh, I'm sorry. Rick Bronstein, 182 Central Avenue, sorry. Has anybody recalled any rocks being approved in Hummerock in the last 5-10 years? I mean, there's a bazillion tons of them. I'm assuming, I know 152 or 158 or somewhere around was recent, but does anybody recall anything ever being approved?
I don't think that a bazillion tons have been hauled in, but
Well, half a bazillion.
I'm sure that there's been stones placed or delivered that wound up there overnight, and
We knew nothing about it.
Well, no, what I'm asking from the board,
well, that's what we were just,
have you ever been?
that's the one that we're just discussing, which I don't, I mean,
In
I've
all
been
these
doing this
years?
10 years, and I don't recall we've had different, because it's a barrier beach, and I respect Mr. Grassi saying this, but every one of these places has different situations. In most cases, where it's not a barrier beach, and Mr. Humphries is a geologist, and it's been explained to me a million times why it's more important to have one type of fortification in one area and a different fortification in another area, and how all that works. So the projects that have gone forward in Scituate that the town is constructing or building have all gone through the process of approval, just like you're here. They weren't done in any other fashion. They had to come before the commission, whether it's a seawall replacement in areas where there was a seawall, or revetments to add additional revetments such as the lighthouse. All those pieces have gone through the commission and had all this process, and with experts like maybe Stan Dinham or someone his position would look at that and give us that input. So, I mean, you're hearing what the commission is saying, that we get the dilemma. We've looked at this, we've seen people put up different types of fencing, different types of stakes, different methods to try to protect the front of their home and try to do it within the parameters that we're being told are acceptable by CZM or DEP. And I understand that you're saying that we are a board and we could okay anything, and then it would be up to DEP to say we disagree. Or the alternative is that we say you can't do this way, or we give a set of orders with the things that we can do, and you can disagree and you can appeal our decision to DEP, which either one doesn't seem too promising to me, to be quite honest. I'm just wondering if there's a way, and we've had meetings with DEP before, they have respect for folks like Mr. Humphries that have some opinion on this. If it's worth our while to try to ask for that, again, to get the folks in the room. We've had several meetings this spring after Riley, discussing how the town could correct some of the problems. I can tell you that I thought some of them were productive, others I found frustrating. But we've done it. They've been willing to do that with us. I don't think, it's kind of bad pun, but they don't have their head in the sand either. I mean, they know that there's some serious issues here, and they're trying to work with all the guidelines that they have. I don't feel comfortable turning my nose up at DEP or CZM, only because of the productivity that the town's had working with them on our community rating, on our elevation programs, and other issues that go on in the town. And we do that in cooperation with these agencies, and I'm not looking to get into a real issue with them. But I think we've also shown that we're willing to work with them, and we have folks that are. Riley brought up some real problems for people where, you heard us earlier tonight, allow someone to re-pour some concrete around their foundation. Now, they're in back of a seawall in a different type of location, but we're allowing those folks to go back and make those repairs where we can. I think it's worth our while to shoot something to DEP and see if we can't have some sort of a meeting and say, listen, people are just at their wits' end here. This dune nourishment thing maybe will work, but it could be a ways off.
Yes.
And you could be years of facing storms without any protection in front of your house. And I think if this commission's willing to take a shot at that and see what could happen, I'd give it a try. And I don't mind sending that request with our agent and see if we can't come up with something. That's the best I think we can offer at this stage. You have three members that.
You don't know of anybody in the last 5 to 10 years that's gotten a permit for this type of thing in Hemlock?
Personally, I've been here for 10, and I don't honestly recall one. I mean, Lisa, Paul.
Yeah, there have been seawall projects. The problem is getting into apples and apples. There have been people who've gone in and picked up the boulders that slid down on the beach and restacked them and repacked them, and
Yeah.
now you're getting in, did they bring any boulders in? Did they bring in 2 boulders? You know, so they're not apples and apples, but yes, there have been seawalls worked on in Humrock.
Yeah.
But not brand new.
So, I mean, I know that this is expensive for you, you get folks in the room here, but I'd suggest that we continue this. Let us make the attempt to do that. We can only see what happens, and then go from
I
there.
just want to point out that Mr. Humphreys has shown that it will meet the performance
Oh, and
standard.
I think that's.
And he has a good reputation for
I've
understanding.
worked with Stan for a long
Right,
time,
okay.
and we've had similar situations.
Then you know he wouldn't say something that he doesn't believe in.
I
That's the
concerned
way he
about his
is.
Mission, you know, and we've had that sort of discussion before at other beaches, and we've gotten somewhere. I wouldn't say that we got everywhere that we'd like to go with this, but it's been something that I think has been helpful. I'd like to think that that's a possibility. I don't know. I don't know whether that's gonna get you there or not, but I'm willing to do that.
There's one last comment, and again, this is from some Rick Bronstein,
Yep.
who's come down here for almost 50 years. It's the first time that I've experienced this whole conservation, and, you know, you hear the rumors of what's happened, it was hard. But I find it frustrating that somebody who doesn't live here, somebody who you know who is CMC or other outside people who have no skin in this, can talk all day long about, oh, this is a coastal dune, like it's, nobody lives there. Now you have people who live here, who want to be a resident here, who have no possible on private property to protect anything that they have on that private property. Because somebody on the outside says, no, you know, we did this and you just can't touch it. Furthermore, that if this was 2 months ago, we could have done everything we wanted to. But we didn't know that. How would you know that? Because you don't live here.
And-
So it's a very frustrating, disjointed, and that's where we look to you, is to help us, because you live here, we live here. We're looking to you for a little bit of, not to do something wrong. Absolutely not.
I think,
That's
you
just an
know,
opinion.
yeah, well, I appreciate it, and I, you know, we did repairs after the storm, and we submitted the paperwork to DEP, working with different, I was in Duxbury, a couple of other places, and we had to go through that process. And there were some people that did some things under the guise of, you know, repairs that didn't, and now we're circling back and battling over that. So did people get some things done during that storm? Of course they did. The fact that you guys are in here and asking for this, I want to help to the best that we can. We're willing to try, and we can see where that goes.
And one last consideration is that, you know, to set an example for people who are going the right way, you can monitor and see what happens, might go a long way from other people saying, it's not gonna work, why even bother trying to do it? Why spend $5,000 on engineers? Just sneak them in the back door.
Tell them you guys are gonna be a pilot, you'll be a guinea pig, you'll try
Well, you
this
know what,
one.
more people might follow, and it might be a self-fulfilling.
Well,
What's your proposal to us?
my suggestion would be that we continue this hearing, and I don't wanna keep sloughing stuff off, but I think that we should continue this hearing, give us the opportunity to request some sort of meeting or discussion with maybe DEP, CZM, see if there's anything that we can set up that they would come to the table on, and just see if that can happen. And I don't know what else to offer you. I mean, if you were to ask me right now where we are with this, I don't see that we can condition the plan as you propose it. So I'd like to find a way that we can come up with something, and I'd like to try that route before we just close the hearing. Once we close this, then we have to do an order, and we're basically done. And I think it'd be worth it to give that a shot.
Okay, we'll go with that.
What do you think?
Certainly not gonna be 2 weeks. I'd push this out at least a month.
Yeah.
So
for
it'd be
October.
10-1.
Huh?
Be 10-1.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll make a motion to continue. both 178 Central Ave, 180 Central Ave to October 1st at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Amy, can I ask you a question? Mr. Bornstein's here tonight to hear his orders. Because he's in the same piece, I know we've closed his
Should be waived.
hearing, but if we can postpone issuing his orders, can that leave the door open to,
I'm not so sure we can do that.
to,
You've got a statutory deadline, 21 days to issue.
can he give us a
after you
waiver
close.
to,
I'm not sure, that's a legal question. I wouldn't recommend that, considering the fact that it could go to appeal, so.
The orders.
So if we were to issue the orders, Frank, he still has 3 years to use those orders, does he not?
so he could amend the orders?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
Okay.
can appeal.
And also, if it were to go that way, that might be the way we get DEP to weigh
Attention.
in.
Yeah,
Because without that, I'm not so sure that DEP is gonna come to the table on it.
right,
But
if one neighbor is,
CZM will,
yeah, okay,
likely, more likely, no guarantees.
okay.
Can I add one thing, just for the benefit of the three parties? It's a little unusual in this town that one of the committees has 3 people who actually live in Humrock on it. And that isn't to say that we can just do whatever we want for your benefit, but it does say that we live there and we know what you're talking about in terms of the beach movement and the issues that are involved. So we are somewhat sympathetic, but we still have rules and regulations we have to go by.
Thank you.
We're
So-
all set.
You got a motion, do we vote it?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's pick up the hand down the road, let's see where we go. Martin, 67 Border Street.
Hi.
Are you,
They're out in the hall with the boys.
well, let's skip that one and go to the next one.
I'm just hanging out.
How many presentations do you have tonight, Paul?
Pleasant surprise.
16.
Pleasant surprise. Frank, do you wanna see the new plan?
I think I've already seen it.
Possibly have, but this is
Yeah.
the new one.
Sure.
Same footprint, where the house was.
My name is Paul Marabito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the applicants
Amendment.
Peter and Monica Martin for an amended
Oh, do I have to?
order of conditions.
Yeah, wait a minute. You might
You have to read something?
I do.
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul. We're all done.
Yeah.
All right, so you get a bye. On August 20th, 2018, I didn't realize I have to read one of these for an amendment. Town Hall, Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws, 30700 Town Situate Code of Bylaws, regarding the application of Peter and Monica Martin to raise and rebuild a single family. Oh, we have this one. So this is just to amend the orders.
Yeah.
As written. Thank you.
Yeah, two weeks ago, we did meet with you to ask whether or not we could file for amended order of conditions or a new notice of intent. And I did present this plan and compare that with what is already approved. The proposal is to keep the existing driveway where it is. There's a small cul-de-sac in this area here. What we did was lower that grade about 5.5 feet from where it was before. The earlier one was placed so that they would walk up 1 or 2 steps to the first floor. Now there's a full set of stairs going up the first floor, and they did that to cut down on the amount of fill. We also removed the proposed garage in here and the walls that went with it. There's also a large wall along the side of this road which is gone as well. So the plan is to raise the existing house and square off these 2 small openings from the ground up. There will be a garage under, a two-car garage. And the blue area will be open decks around the house, where there are some decks at the present time. There's some existing sidewalks here at grade level, those will be gone, so all the activity is gonna be up on the decks. The only time they'd be on the ground is walk out to the marsh for their kayaks. So, I think with that, I'll end and answer any questions you may have.
Are you going to bring in any fill?
We are bringing in some fill for the driveway to rebuild it, because the driveway's.
Rebuild it,
Yeah, the driveway has to go, it's in terrible shape.
but it's
And there is some.
nothing like the previous plan.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
it's not even close,
Yeah. Okay, it's just for the driveway.
yes,
It's not for the yard area.
that's right.
Thank you.
Much better. I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Amy, comments on, changes or?
No, I mean, I guess, the limit of work. Paul, is it the limit of work, this plan is tough to read. But we have a limit of work on here? I mean, I know there was one on the other site plan
No,
that
but-
defined the work area for the project.
Well, the work area would be in the driveway, in this contour, and then up here around the house. The limit of work here is substantially less than the previous one.
Well, I understand that,
Yeah,
but
I-
I'm saying that just to define the limit of work, usually we designate that with a silt fence or at
I
least
can put a line on
silt
there.
sock on the down gradient side to keep sediments from migrating into the resource area.
Yeah.
I can give you a revised plan with that on it, if you want to condition it.
Is there much excavation, Paul, for the, in this renovation? I mean,
No.
we have to protect, that driveway runs along that wetland, so maybe there's some protection there. But like work around the house, footings, sonotubes?
They're gonna pick the house up 1 foot, the existing garage floor is 12.
Mhm.
It has to be a 13-1, which is what we did. So the elevations, you can see that we aren't changing the grades around the house here. This is all ledge in here. And again, the open decks will be here. This is all ledge. So,
So my question is if there's excavation or disturbance, do we need to have anything to, just to keep machines out of the wetlands, or even if
no,
it's?
the machines wouldn't go anywhere near the wetland. I mean, I could show, the limit of work would probably be 5 feet off of this line here,
Okay.
just to give them room to work. And the same in here, come up and around. This is the only grading we're doing.
Okay. I mean, in some places it doesn't make sense to have a silt sock, but a combination of silt sock or something.
Well, I'll show the silt sock. What I'll do is put that at the limit of work that I just described.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think silt fence on the up gradient side and then on the down gradient side, if we could just do a silt sock.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
because once the contractors get out there, there's soil everywhere. I mean, and just like if there's gonna be a stockpile of soil at length, it would be good to have a silt sock
You
surrounding
don't have
that.
much fill coming in for this.
Right.
And that's a good thing.
Which is good,
Yeah, it is good.
wonderful. Beautiful, beautiful place.
Anybody else? In the audience? Right.
So do
Okay.
we make a motion to accept the amended plan?
That's what I'd be looking for.
Okay, I make a motion, we accept the amended plan for 67 Border Street.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
You're
Good
welcome.
luck with your project.
Do the order of conditions get revised then? Do we get a new?
Yes.
So you're,
They'll maybe be recorded, but in the expiration date doesn't change. But you'll get an amended order.
Okay.
It'll be a little
good luck with your
simpler.
project. You'll get there.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
It's very-
Is it Senate?
Senate.
29 Rebecca Road on August 20th, 2018, 6:30 PM in Town Hall. Situate Conservation will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Situate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Francis J. Senate to elevate existing single-family dwelling on a new foundation, dwelling on property located at 29 Rebecca Road, Scituate. Others abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Paul Mirabito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the owner and applicant, Frank Sennett. Mr. Sennett has owned the house on this property. Property lines are outlined in yellow. And the house has received some severe damage in the past 3 or 4 storms. He's at the point where he wants to elevate the house up on the wood piles. We have submitted to you the notice of intent along with some documents that you could use for the FEMA grant program. The house currently sits in zone AE 15 and also velocity zone 16. He's proposing to put the top of the pile up at elevation 18.1, which is 2.1 feet above the velocity zone, and that's to meet the state building code requirement. The plan is to take the house up and move it to the side, and then prep the site and drive the piles and put it back. These are the proposed stairways that he'll need once the house is way up off the ground. The ground around the house is anywhere from 10 to elevation 8 in the back. And again, the first floor of that house is going to be around 20.1, which will be about 12 feet above this grade and 11 feet above this. That's the reason for so many stairs. There's pictures in the application that show this is the existing porch here. It's a covered porch that was there when we did the survey, but it got ripped off in the storm back in March. So that will be replaced. There's a structural pilot plan that was submitted to you. It was prepared by Rivermore Engineering. There's no proposed grade changes on the site, and this will be serviced by town water and town sewer. I'll end with that and answer any questions you may have.
I don't have any questions. Good.
Richard?
No, I think it's okay.
Paul?
Nope.
Lisa?
Nothing.
Ken?
Nope.
Any input?
Looks good, yeah.
Anybody in the audience?
I make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay. Atlantic Drive. On August 20th, 2018, 6:30 p.m. in the Town Hall, Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Constitutional Code for the bylaws regarding the application of Christopher and Michelle Heath to elevate existing single-family dwelling onto a pile foundation located at 38 Atlantic Avenue, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Okay, thank you. My name is Paul Mirabito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the new owners, Christopher and Michelle Heavey. You may recognize this site. It was previously owned by the Cote family. They own this house at 38 Atlantic Drive, and they also own the land across the street, which they had a new septic system permitted. The Cotes did file a notice of intent, and they filed it with the intent of getting FEMA funding. The funding had not come through, so they sold the property. And since then, funding has come through, and the new owners who purchased the property last year haven't placed the funding. They've been awarded a grant. I worked with Nancy Durfee before she left to bring all the existing documents up to the current status. And the reason we're refiling the notice of intent is because the notice of intent ran out 3 weeks ago, on July 16th. So we had to refile it. But the funding's in place, and they're ready to go. They have all the contractors lined up, so.
Okay.
Nothing's changed. They're still gonna keep the same house. It's a pretty small lot, and they don't have much room to move it, so what they're gonna do is pick it up and put piles underneath it.
Well, where are they gonna move the house while they raise it?
Pardon?
Where are they gonna put the house while they raise it?
I I think the plan is to move it out toward the beach and drive the piles from the street, come in from the street and pile on top. They should go pretty easy, it's all sand. We did test pits over here,
Yeah.
it's all gravel. all
No, it wouldn't
all
work
the way
over
down.
there.
Yeah, those will go in easy.
Okay. Paul?
Looks good.
Lisa?
An improvement.
Ken?
Nope,
Any other?
looks good, this is what we want people to do.
Yeah, get them up
Okay.
high.
Anybody in the audience?
Make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good luck with that one. Good luck.
Do it soon.
On August 20th, 2018, at 6:40 PM, the Town Hall Situate Conservation Commission will hold a hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700 Town of Situate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Stephen and Mary Louise Bowen to build a ground floor addition on slab foundation at dwelling property located at 25 Circuit Ave, Situate, Brothers Limited, First Cottage, and Cottage 15.
Okay, so for the record, it's Jeff DeLisi, Orenberger, DeLisi, and Harris. I'm here with Stephen Bond tonight, along with Paul Marabito. I think you know this guy, right? You guys know him? Paul will explain the project. Pretty much what's going on, though, is there's a small addition to an existing house on 25 Circuit Avenue in the rear of the house, along with replacement of some previously disturbed lawn with some pervious pavers. And Paul will go through. We had hired Nick Lanny, who you guys might be familiar with, on the property over on Crescent Avenue at the last meeting. I think you're issuing orders on that tonight. Same individual to come out and do some tests on the stability of the bank back there, and Paul can report what his findings were, but they were favorable. I think that the key, and Paul will explain it, is that there's not, the addition itself, replacing, I think, the existing foundation in that small area is not going to really create any additional vertical weight. So we don't expect any real change at all with the proposed condition. But Paul can explain it better than myself.
Okay, thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Bond own the property at 25 Circuit Avenue. They have an existing dwelling shown in brown. The only real usable yard area is to the rear on the ocean side. The FEMA flood zone is elevation 19, which is it's about halfway up the slope, and from here back, everything is in Zone X. The top of the coastal bank was taken along this orange line. We show a 50-foot buffer and a 100-foot buffer to the coastal bank. This whole site is entirely developed with landscaping, lawn features, hardscape features. What they're proposing to do, there's 2 or 3 things they're proposing to do. One is to put a small addition. They'll come out 6 feet from this doorway, come out 6 feet and come over 17 feet. And this will be a small addition to the house. It'll be a slab at grade off the first floor. It'll be a frost wall. There's no basement in that area. They're proposing a pervious patio area here, similar to the bluestone patio here, that's existing. There are a row of shrubs coming along the top of the bank, and they wrap around to the house here. There's a small opening here that they can look at out to the ocean, but you can't walk from here down to here because the slope is very steep in this area. There's actually 2 coastal banks. There's one at the bottom of this slope, which is the revetment, which is flat. This slope here is also riprap, huge boulders that have been mortared in place. This is a very well anchored coastal bank. There's no signs of any damage from the storm in March, from either one of those storms. They have an existing septic system. This is the leaching area, it's kind of an odd shape. This was put in back in 1999. It's a force main, there's a pump chamber here and a septic tank. And the existing force main comes up here and it goes into the system. The plan is to disconnect this septic system here, and from here tie into the town sewer that's in Circuit Ave. They're also proposing to put a pervious driveway in this area here, to have a circular drive. Reason being is there's really no place to park up on this street here when cars are up here. This pervious pavers will actually be over the sand filled area for the septic system. Again, the septic system is in this outline here. So with the exception of this, which would be gravel, this whole area is going to be on top of probably 5 or 6 feet of sand fill they brought in when they replaced the septic system. This is a large ledge outcrop in this area here. They're proposing a proposed fire pit in this area, and I have some pictures of the coastal bank. This is the house at 25 Circuit Ave, and you can see the vertical slope. This is the vertical slope of the coastal bank, which is very steep. You can't walk down that. Then you have the other revetment, which is flat. There's also a small stone retaining wall, which we show on the plan, down in the left front area of the house lot. And this is the bank, which is well vegetated. These are rows of rugosa that are going along the top of the coastal bank. You can see it in here, and it goes here, and it comes back up around the house. This is that small opening I was talking about. You can see how steep that bank is, which you obviously can't walk down. The proposed addition would be 14 feet from the top of the bank. And I did discuss this with Nick Lanny, and what he told me was that the soils up in here are a very dense glacial till. Where this is not a full foundation, it's a frost wall. He didn't see any issues with constructing that in the location shown on the plan. The weight of the soil excavated is probably the same or equal to the proposed addition. Again, the proposed addition is going to come out. It's going to come out from out here 6 feet, which brings it into this mulch bed, and it's going to come down to. Proposed addition is going to come down to this window here. So what they're going to do is take this and bring it down to the center window, and they're still going to have the balconies up top, which are cantilevered. So the only thing touching the ground would be that proposed footing. We also did the work on this house several years ago. This is a full basement house, about 30 feet from the coastal bank. And this house over here, which was reconstructed, I think about maybe 12 years ago, that's probably 14 or 15 feet from the top of the bank as well. Yeah, this is a very dense till up here. This house, according to the assessors, was built 1920. The houses have been up for a while.
Any?
That's kind of my only concern, Paul, is that you are coming close to the coastal bank. You know, I think everything else is fine, and, but I'm not an expert. It's just, I hate anything going near it to coastal banks, but it isn't you're not gonna dig down, you're gonna put a slab down, correct?
It's just a 4-foot frost wall. We'll fill
Yeah.
that in.
Yeah.
Just put the slab coming off the first floor.
Yeah. All right. See,
I'm good.
It's a pretty well fortified cliff, too.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but any disturbance, can
I
change
understand,
everything.
yeah.
You all set? Lisa? Jen? Amy?
I mean, I don't have much other than the obvious on this one, so they're increasing the encroachment on the buffer, the no disturb buffer, but I mean, it seems, it's already lawn, so it's
Yeah.
not new disturbance. I would like to see detail for the pervious pavers, just to see that there's drainage that's gonna happen.
Between them.
Just a detail on the site plan would be
We
nice.
do show that as a pervious patio and the pervious pavers on front.
But just the detail of the
Oh,
substrate, so that it, you
Yep.
know, because there's gonna be gravel underneath, how it's constructed to actually allow, because some of those pervious, even though you say they're pervious, if they're laid down close to each other, the
Yeah, it's
water's
not.
just gonna run off, so it's not gonna filter in. But,
Anybody in the audience? I think Paul made a pretty good point that it's a pretty steep and armored bank, Chip. There's not much movement that's going on there. We've had experience with that area as well. It's not like a sandy area that you could disturb a lot. As Amy points out, it just keeps encroaching on the bank, so to make sure that this patio actually functions as something that drains is important. You're closing in a little bit more of an area that's close to the bank, but there's really not much room to move. Just a quick question, there's maybe on the other side of the house, you've got the proposed pervious driveway, so I'm assuming that's pervious pavement?
Pavers, yes it is. yeah.
Pavers, that's just what she asked for, the
Pavers.
details.
Yeah,
Well, there's a slate pervious patio going towards the ocean side.
it's similar to a bluestone
Right.
patio with a.
But that's the
space in
same, I
the
think
ground.
you're asking for both. You want to just be sure that
Yes,
that can drain.
yeah.
And what you're trying not to do is have any more run over. In some cases, it could disturb the bank. In this one, it's really not gonna, because it's armored pretty much right up to the top.
It is. And those joints at the top are also
Well,
boarded.
yeah.
And as soon as you leave this part here, all these joints are boarded. You can
Right.
see them here.
Is the existing driveway getting replaced, or?
No, that's gonna stay there. That's the driveway goes into the garage right now.
Yeah.
Keep
If I
it-
may, I'm tending to, the asphalt driveway I'm tending to take out.
Okay.
Because the garage, there's a garage which to me is unusable, we're gonna make it even less usable. So I don't believe the paving is gonna even go up to the garage anymore. It'll be replaced by the permeable, whatever that is.
Okay.
Whatever it is, we'll make sure it's.
All right, maybe you could Paul could make a note on the plan to show how that works, all right? Good. I mean, that's a win, as far as I can see. If that becomes all
Right.
permeable
That's great.
pavers, that's great. Okay.
Okay. I make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you very much.
On August 20th, 2018, at 6:45 PM, Town Hall, the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws, regarding the application of David Winnick Jr. to construct and maintain a pier, canoe and kayak rack, ramp, and float at dwelling property located at 230 Central Ave, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Again, my name's Kevin McGuire with the folks that put together the plans and the applications for Dave Winnick, who's the applicant, who's sitting right here.
2:30.
So I'm going to double check being said. But the green card that this thing is one people.
Okay.
Just let me want to of his boards. This is gonna cost me.
Oh, ho, ho, ho.
It's not gonna cost you much, Kevin, if you're not doing any more of these.
That's what he's looking for.
Oh.
Be with you in a sec.
Did Paul want the plan on the back of that one?
I can drop it off in his office. And again, the pier is about 88 feet long. It starts just over the property line. In order to get to the pier, there'll be a removable, probably aluminum ramp going up. Once you get to the end of the pier, on both sides of the pier, there'll be they're 3 feet wide, both sides by 14 feet long, canoe and kayak racks. They're open bottom. At the end of the pier will be the ramp going down to the float. There's 3 separate floats there. It's U-shaped, as you can see. And the main float is going to be about 20 feet long by 10 feet wide, and we need that 10 feet in order for that ramp to sit on it, because it will be held by piles, and as the float goes up and down, the ramp is going to move on the float. On one side of the main float is a 4 by 20 foot long finger pier, and on the other side is a 32 foot long by 4 foot wide one of the fingers. Up here you can see section B, and that shows you what the open bottom canoe and kayak rack is going to look like. Down here is section A, and that's a cross section of the pier right in this area here, and section B is the profile of the pier. When we decided to do the project, we did ask DEP to remove the gravel from Mr. Winnick's house, which is a few doors down. He doesn't own the property directly across the street from this pier, but he's down here to remove the gravel at the overwash from the ocean. Gave us permission for that, but we also asked to remove it on the pier lot, and DEP said no, we couldn't do that. And then eventually things changed in the town, with the town, to allow some of the people to clean those lots up. But Mr. Winnick decided to just leave the material there. And you can see on this section the profile of the existing ground. So when he gets close to the road, which would be right here, is the highest of where the material is. So he is going to have to move a little bit of material in that area, just so that ramp will slope down, won't be resting on it.
He bought the house at 250 with the outdoor kitchen on the ocean
Over
side.
here,
He's got bets when it's
on
gonna go down.
left side shows you the resource areas, the coastal bank, land under the ocean, land containing shellfish. And in the notice of intent that we submitted, it identifies the quantities of disturbance, very little disturbance. You can see it in the different resource descriptions. It's mostly from the piles. We also gave you the square footage of the elevated structure, which would be shading over shale, which I don't think is anybody's problem. And also, there's an attachment A, the end of the notice of intent, that describes all of these resources, including the towns. As far as your wetlands regulations, the only thing we could find in here was just tidelands. As I also identified in attachment A.
Penny?
No, I don't have any questions.
I don't right this second.
Paul?
I'm good.
Lisa?
I don't have any questions about this, and then they did a beautiful job in the house with an outdoor kitchen.
Thanks.
Jen?
I don't know about the house, but I'm sure it's lovely. I'm good.
No, so we're still waiting for the Chapter 91 to respond.
Again, we haven't even begun to file the Chapter
Oh, okay.
91 until we get through you guys.
Okay.
We did file with the Army Corps, which is, and we're also required to file with the Division of Marine Fisheries, which we did, and attached to
That's
the
what I
letter
was looking for.
is, oh yeah, it's attached to the letter. It's part of,
That's what I was looking for.
Oh, okay.
Intent is to return receipt that was,
Took care of my question.
So you got feedback from them already?
They said they didn't care. That's remarkable. At this time.
So, if we're, do we typically, I always lose track on these because I know they're complicated. Do we want to close on this?
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Okay.
They can't file for the 91 until
We have to go to the planning board and the building department to get the form signed in order to file with 91, and we can't go to those
Unless
folks
we close.
unless we have the order of conditions.
Okay.
Isn't
All right.
that backwards from normal things?
I just
I know,
know that
I
it's,
know.
Kevin helped me
This
with
is-
one years ago and I was lost through the process.
Nothing's changed.
Still lost.
Ooh, zing.
Wow.
But now you're found.
We're gonna find you this time, Frank.
Yeah, all right.
I'll make a motion to close.
I'll second
The
it.
sad part is, according to Kevin, he's not doing many more of these, so I don't know who's
I don't know,
gonna.
maybe not when we file. We came in to file was this August 2nd. I had to pay my taxes, so maybe I will be back. They're getting worse.
There you go. Good.
All in favor?
See? You don't need to do anything, Frank.
Okay. You're off like a herd of
He's off
turtles.
and running.
All right, good luck with your project.
Thank you, good luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you. As always, it's well prepared. Thank you. On August 20th, 2018, 6:50 PM, the Town Hall Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing on Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Situate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of John Jr. and Rebecca Lewis and Colleen and James Lewis for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, an ANRAD, on properties located at 119 and 119 Man Hill Road and 390 Hadley Road, Scituate. Butters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Did
And,
they say how far out they wanna go?
This one, they wanted a continuance for a month,
so,
which is October 1st.
Yep.
Good one.
I make a motion to continue 119 Man Hill, 390 Hadley Road, Lewis, October 1st at 6:20.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
The certificates of mailing, if we don't already have that for this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta step out for 1 second because I wanna run with a couple of these special
Sure.
continuances.
Sure. So we have some requests for extension, Amy?
Yes, so,
We did one, you got the other ones on board?
right, so we did one of these last meeting, and now we've received the remainder of the requests,
Okay,
and so, they are looking for a 3-year extension.
okay.
We've got the paperwork ready, free to sign, so.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we are going to give a 3-year extension to 47, 49, 53, 55 Surfside Road.
You can do them all at once?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Okay.
Do you wanna go to CFCs?
CFCs, yep.
Okay.
Anybody have a problem?
I read them. Did you?
Well, so we've got 4 CFCs that, they're all older
Yeah,
filings, they're all good, so.
okay, good.
And we don't need a vote,
No,
so we're just gonna issue.
okay, sounds good to us.
And
Okay.
then the orders, we can vote in as one, or you can take them individually.
The only,
I think we can wait for Frank, though.
yeah, I
so
think we have to
the board
wait for
here.
Frank.
Yeah.
For Mr. Bronstein, it'll be just a couple of minutes.
I'm waiting for the smoke from the chimney.
You're not gonna have to see it on.
Do you have a specific thing you're waiting for?
I was, what you just did for the certificate of compliance, and then the one that you're waiting for Frank to come back.
Okay.
I just
All right.
thought I'd hear.
That's fine. That's fine. Sir,
Another order.
is there a
of
particular
conditions.
thing you're waiting for? Okay, good. Then just a couple of minutes. Frank will be back.
Just to provide you with Monday night. Better than the ball game.
You're right.
You need some hobbies.
We're on a quick timeout.
What else you guys want to talk about?
I don't know,
every
we go
year.
from a perfectly hot summer like Florida, then we go to a monsoon. Pulled my stairs.
Frank, we've done everything we can without you. Now we
Stairs.
need you again.
What was it?
Another neighbor didn't pull their stairs.
No, we have to do the
Ripped
orders
off
of
the
conditions.
seawall. This is
Richard,
awful.
it seems like you're doing well.
Waves are so intense, ripped off stairs. That was nuts.
Just the
You know,
orders of
sand from the
I
conditions.
think we're gonna see autumn start.
And Amy said we could do
It's gonna go for Labor Day.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, it's already here.
Yeah, it's not a good,
So I take a motion to accept the orders and conditions for 182 Central Ave.
I make a motion that we accept the orders and conditions for 182 Central Ave as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sure. Accept the orders and conditions for Perfetti, 294 Central Ave.
I make a motion to accept the orders for 294 Central Ave as written.
Second.
all in favor,
Accept the orders for Crary,
All in favor, aye.
all in favor, aye.
Town of Scituate DPW water improvement. Are we all set with that? We've got everything.
Well,
You're gonna see it, we're actually gonna. do an
Yes.
issue
Yeah,
date
she
in a
emailed
few
us this
days.
morning, yes.
I just wanna sit down with Dan and Sean to go over.
but the orders are ready.
Okay.
Yes, they're
Okay.
ready for you to sign.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
I make a motion we accept the orders for the Town of Scituate DPW well 17.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And accept the orders for Barbary at 58 Crescent Ave, raise and rebuild.
Make a motion we accept the orders as written for 58 Crescent.
Why not? Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Okay.
Certificates of compliance?
We did 'em.
We did those.
Oh, good.
So we're done. I make,
We're not just pretty faces here.
I know. I think we're all done.
You know that.
Got me back.
You gotcha, you
He
gotcha.
did, he did.
All right.
Okay, I
We'll
make
make the
a,
big motion.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Goodbye.